County Public Facilities Committee, Monday, April the 18th. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Well, welcome everybody. Sarah, I assume we've done the proper notifications of FOIA?
Yes, sir, we have.
Thank you. Look for a motion to approve the agenda that we have before us.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. York.
I'll second the motion.
Howard, thank you. Any objections? Seeing none, without objection, the agenda stands approved. We have our minutes from the March 21st meeting of Public Facilities. Again, looking for a motion on that.
So move.
Thank you, York.
I'll make the second, sir.
Alice, okay, good. We should have done them together. Any objections or changes or modifications? Everybody sees? Okay, those stand approved without objection. Do we have anybody that wanted to address us from a citizen's comment standpoint?
No, sir, we don't.
Okay, well, we'll get that done. And Jared is, he said he was on spring break, so we're, we'll have a couple of comments as we get to the end that relate to some of the stuff that he might have talked to. So anyway, that brings us to start the agenda items, and I'm going to take items 8, 9, and 10 together. We talk about all three. These are three contracts. One is for the roof replacement of the administration building. One is a boat landing, and the other is updating some of the freezer stuff for the detention center. So let's both come up, explain them to us, what we got going here, and let's see if council has some comments or questions on them.
Mr. Chairman, it takes two of us to replace Jared, so actually taking a well-deserved vacation. Item 8 is an action item for recommendation contract award for roof replacement. It's long overdue. The roof is about 30 years old.
Dave, I'm gonna need to get you to hold up for a moment. Huh? We got a little bit of a legal issue here.
Okay.
We've got an agenda that says we're starting at 3. So we're about 6 minutes ahead of schedule, so we probably need to.
It says the finance.
Following the finance.
Oh, no sooner than 2:30. I got you. Never mind. Sorry. Thank you. Thank you.
You're on
Thank
your
you.
toes, though.
Thank you. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Okay, so the roof replacement, so it's about a 30-year-old roof for this building. It's much needed. The recommendation is to award the contract to CE BOURNE Company, and the contract procurement was done through using OMNIA Partners. That's a procurement, state-approved, very similar to Sourcewell. So the staff's recommendation is to award the admin building roof replacement at CE BOURNE Company for $1,299,912. I'll turn it over to Neil for Trask.
So good afternoon, Chairman. Just real quick, the HE Boat Trask landing repairs. This is for the landing that's out there on Bluffton and near Carlton River Plantation. The boat landing basically sheared off the pile guides several months back, and we're looking to replace it and put back in the floating component. The successful bidder was RL Morrison out of Charleston, and for $288,609, and we're recommending approval to award.
Okay.
And the final action item is the recommendation to replace the detention center cooler freezer. Bid was solicited, 2 proposals came in. The low bid from Low Country Refrigeration was disqualified. They did not have a bid bond. So the recommendation is to make the contract award to Coastal Air Technologies in the amount of $229,840.
Okay, and do I understand these are all in budget?
They're all with, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Open it up for questions and comments?
Yeah,
Yes, sir.
just a question on the roof replacement here. Is it a complete tear off and replacement of
Yes.
the roof?
Yep.
And what about any of the units that are existing on the roof? As you tear off the roof, do we have to do anything with the units on the roof?
This is just for the roof. The company that's doing that is just roof. I do not know about the units.
Yeah, we'll reuse the units and work around those to the extent possible. But this is a roof repair and also a new guttering system. The original design of this building, many folks don't know, but the gutters are actually within the roof. So that's what's causing a lot of leakage now. So all of that has to be repaired and redesigned and reconstructed to put the gutters on the outside of the building where they ought to be. So.
Okay, thank you.
If memory serves me correctly, many years ago, we had a similar situation on the courthouse, I think, didn't we? And ended up getting some kind of financial settlement.
I think that involved windows.
Was that Windows?
Yes,
Okay.
this is just a design fix that's necessary that's causing some issues that not only I but at least two other county administrators have been waiting to see repaired. So anyway, that's how long this has been going on. So anyway.
The actual thing that happened was we did settle with the manufacturer and the architect, and the proceeds of all of that for both of the buildings, and I don't think the detention center was included in that, but the administration building and the courthouse building, all that money went to the redesign and rebuilding the courthouse building. So that left the administration building to suffer through for a number of years, and it's time now. It really is past due. And so with that in mind, sir, I'll make a motion for all three of these.
Great, thank you. A second?
I'll second.
Okay, Gerald, thank you. Good to have you back, sir. And one other thing I would comment on the boat landing, Lad Howe spoke with us at council, and some of you new may not remember him, but he served as the county attorney for many years and a very prominent attorney here. And I thought he spoke relative to the boat landings because we'd be concerned about whether we have the right to get to those, and he made the point about the prescriptive, since they've been used for so long, that we actually have a prescriptive right to use those. So hopefully that will help put some of that issue to bed on access to all of our good boat landings. Joe?
Yeah. Speaking of boat landing, Neil, you and I had a discussion several weeks ago about a situation we had with the Harry Tubman Bridge landing there at Columbia River. And there was some debris blocking one of the lanes of the boat launching into the water. I went down there, I think it was Friday of last week, and it's gathering back up again. And so at your earliest convenience, if you would take a look at that and see if we can clear that out and get that debris from under the floating dock so it doesn't trap all the.
Yeah, and that's a continual issue that we have to deal with, so we'll make sure we touch it back up again and whatnot and continue to monitor it.
Thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second. Any further comments, discussion? Any objections? Seeing none, items 8, 9, and 10 stand approved without objection. Item number 11 is basically to accept a $3,200 grant from Palmetto Pride Litter Enforcement. It's a resolution for us to do that. Seems pretty straightforward. Any background on that would be useful to us?
The grant will be used, $3,200, not a lot of money, but it'll be used for litter enforcement cameras, essentially trail cameras.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
And a motion on that?
So move.
Thank you. York, thank you. Any further discussion? Questions? Any objection? Seeing none, that's number 11 stands approved without objection. That takes us to a discussion on road work on private roads.
Yes.
Tell us about that.
This is an issue that comes up from time to time, particularly in the rural areas where we have a lot of private roads that involve things called family compounds. Many of those roads are impassable for our emergency equipment to get down, ambulances, fire trucks, things like that. So this policy that Neil and Kurt Taylor have worked on, and I'm going to let Neil walk you through the details of it, is something that we need you all to consider as to whether or not you all want to authorize the county to do work on private property. County administration, we take no position one way or the other. I do feel compelled to tell you all that this would be a one-time obligation by the county on individual private roads. But I'm not real sure how effective we can say that on paper, but when it comes to life safety, public safety issues, if the road is private and hasn't been maintained by private property owners, then, I don't know how successful we could be long-term, telling folks, well, we repaired your road 2.5 years ago, so you don't get it repaired any longer. So those are things that you need to consider as we move through this. I'm gonna turn it over to Neil and Kurt now and let them walk you through the details.
Okay, good.
So Chairman and Council, per directive from the county administrator, I started to look at research on the Public Works Department within South Carolina that had similar issues like us dealing with private roads and private assets. The response back was from about 18 other Public Works Department that provided me some comments. In addition, Brittany Ward also reached out to her counterparts and colleagues throughout the state, and she received that information as well. With that, Kurt and I, Kurt compiled the agreement that we have that's before you about the one-time maintenance. Currently, within the Public Works database, we have the opportunity to keep track of some of this information so we can have a perpetual list going forward. This would be a one-time repair maintenance, and there are some specifics about crush and run in the ordinance as well as some specifics about getting the assistance and guidance from emergency services as far as roads being impassable for EMS trucks and things of that nature.
Okay. Kurt?
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. I'll first start off by saying this is a closed question. There is a prohibition in state law against using public funds on private property. However, what we have done in the ordinance that we set up here is it's a bifurcated concept. One is, in one part of the ordinance, is after natural disasters, allowing us as a county and or any contractors we have to go on private property to make roads passable, put debris on private property or to otherwise make roads passable after a storm, for example. Second part is the one-time approach to going to private property to make it accessible to public safety. So what we've done here is I think we've gone as far as we possibly can to make an ordinance that's enforceable under that prohibition against using public property, public funds on private property. It does mirror the language from several other counties in the state that have county attorneys that I respect greatly. I'm not telling you that this would be unassailable, but I'm telling you that we've done the best job we can, I think, at coming up with an enforceable ordinance.
Okay, thank you, Kurt. Open it for discussion. York and
Mr. Chairman, first, let me just thank the county staff for bringing this forward. My district has, and I can speak for Mr. Dawson's district as well, probably have more of the private roads that are in communities where there are multiple property owners going down a road trying to get to somebody's house. And one of the things that is a major problem for the community is that if they wanted to bring a private road into the county, it requires the county to have all the landowners supporting that. So if you got one landowner to say no, but you got a road that's almost a half a mile, then the citizens down that road really suffers a lot over time from wear and tear. What the community has been asking for is, they understand that a private road, you should not use public funds. What they're asking for is allowing the road to be improved to a level so that, if nothing else, emergency vehicles can go down. And I think that's the spirit of what this policy would bring to the table, is that when there's a time that is difficult for public service to go down that road, the county can step in and say, we'll come in and at least bring it up to a level of service. And I think that's the spirit of this policy. So I'm hoping that council will see the value in that and move it forward. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Chairman?
I do see the value in this. My concern is this: who makes the determination that this road is not passable for emergency vehicles, fire vehicles? How are we going to assess that? And who is going to assess that?
So currently, the way the ordinance is written is an official from one of those departments would make the assessment, and/or myself or one of my staff members.
Well, that's how you would determine it. Who would initiate that? Would it be someone from one of those roads, as Mr. Glover has said? You know, you have 5 people on a road that's half-mile long. Would one of those people say, I am concerned that this road could not support a fire truck, an ambulance, something like that? Is that where we're going to have the trigger from?
That could be one of the triggers. The other trigger could be from emergency services themselves saying,
Okay.
we serviced this house last night, and on our way there, we noticed that it was difficult to pass.
We, just so council's aware, we have at least one situation in the county, out in Councilmember Glover's district, that we cannot get an ambulance down that road. And there's an elderly person that lives on that road. So if there's a need for an ambulance, we have to instruct that family that they have to get that person to the end of that road, in order to be transported into the ambulance.
Yeah.
I can't remember the name of the road now, but Tecumseh Road. Yeah, Tecumseh.
I've had similar situations in my district as well, to the point where EMS was called, and upon EMS trying to get to the resident, either they got stuck or they got to the point where they couldn't go any further and made a determination that it was ill-advised to venture down the road any further. This ordinance drafted mirrors the intent of former and past Administrator Kubik. Under Kubik's administration, I had several incidents in my district where he assisted in providing a one-time fix to several roads in my district, especially during inclement weather and during the hurricanes, because those roads just become so saturated until it's hard for a private vehicle to get in and out, let alone an emergency vehicle. And so to draft this ordinance, I think, would go a long ways in assisting those people in these on these private roads, and us as well as the county council and the administration, as far as having to deal with the frustration and the legalities and all that comes with our citizens saying, well, you know, we pay taxes too, but we're not getting any service, even though it is a private road. So I would encourage us to support this, just to support the rural communities with the adverse situations dealing with private roads during adverse conditions.
Okay. Mark?
I actually have a problem with us spending public money on private roads. Again, you look at taxpayers, and then we're paying to take care of a private road, because when you read this ordinance, it doesn't talk about who owns the property. You could have a large property owner that wants his road fixed, compared to what again, the circumstances that Mr. Glover and Mr. Dawson are mentioning, I completely understand. So when you look at this ordinance, we're saying we'll help anybody one time, and it could be someone that owns 10,000 acres and it's one property owner, or it could be someone that owns multiple. I think there needs to be some way that it's under some type of as-needed basis. They apply for it. There's money set aside if we're going to do this, as opposed to having just a blanket ordinance that says we're going to go in one time, and what happens, you know, later on, 5 years from now, the one time is up and he's done again. So, you know, what's the limit? So is it never? Is it sometimes? Is it for the next 5 years? So I think we're missing a lot in this ordinance for me to move forward because there's too many loopholes. There's no money that is set aside. Who's going to pay for it? Where's it coming from? How much are we going to spend? So, you know, I commend you on looking to try to do something like this, but there needs to be parameters that it helps the people that need the help, and that needs to be controlled somehow.
Okay, folks online, I'll come back to you. But I can't necessarily all see you all, so anybody online want to speak? Okay, York?
I want to address Mark and the comment the chairman made also. I think there are really legitimate concerns, and I agree with you 100%. When it comes to the initiation, I really don't think a homeowner, private landowner, should initiate that. I mean, they can, but I think it should be validated by the EMS folks to say that yes, we cannot, go down this road, because we're not in the business of maintaining private properties. At the same time, we could put, just like we have some of our services now through stormwater and other areas, that we will go into a community in an area if you have X amount of dwellings in that. So you're servicing a sort of a community versus servicing one individual. And I think we can put language like that in this ordinance so that, we're not handling just a private owner with just one property, because that should be left up to that person. But if you got a community there of folks, and we can use a number, I don't know what that number is, but we do have in our statutes now X amount of numbers for dwelling for us to provide services. We could use that as a benchmark in helping a particular interest, because it's private road, and it's all, some of it is heirs property, some of it is actually owned by individuals. But, when you have, in this case here with Tecumseh Lane, the people, the owners of the front part doesn't even live there. So they don't use that. They don't have access. They don't need that road and stuff. But there are homes beyond that actually need that services. And you have to have the signatures of every last property owner for even to bring it into the county domain. They're not asking for that at this time. We're not asking for that. We just want to make sure that the folks who live beyond the areas can actually have emergency vehicles to go down that road and stuff. That's basically what this sort of tried to address. So I don't know whether that answers your question or not, but I think we can put stipulations in there so that we can make sure that it's not one or two property owners who owns that road and stuff, but it's a community that actually will be benefiting from the services and stuff. So just want to throw that out. Thank you.
We need an ordinance of this type, regardless of the tweaking that we do with it. The administration needs some help and guidance in how to deal with situations like this. Last year, we had a windstorm that came through, and we had a tree that fell on Rambling Roads in my district. Those folks were trapped in their houses and in their road, couldn't get out to even go to work, let alone get emergency vehicles in for 2 days, because the administration was grappling with, well, it's a private road and we can't spend public dollars on private road. And so I wouldn't want to see us, the council, put the administration in that predicament again, to where they got to make a judgment call of not assisting folks that live on the private road in an emergency situation where they actually need desperate help.
And, if I may, we want to do the right thing for our citizens. I do understand that public versus private is a major impediment here, spending public dollars on private land. I heard you say that prior administration talked about a one-time, but yet we're bringing it up again. So if something was fixed one time years ago, it may be in that situation again. I want to see this passed with some other stipulations in there. If in fact we have to go in because of a safety situation to fix a private road, there may be some cost that has to be borne by the citizens who live on that private road, that it cannot be free of charge, public dollars being spent on a private road. And I know that may be a difficult thing to do. So that might be something else that we have to do. Like I said, somebody's going to make a decision that, yeah, you're right. This is a problem. We can't get a fire truck or an emergency vehicle down there. Somebody's going to generate that request. So there's all kinds of things that we're going to have to do. And I think it needs further consideration about the dollars we're going to spend to do that.
A question is, on the one time, is there a dollar amount that was suggested in the ordinance? I didn't look at it close enough.
No, there was not.
Okay.
No, there isn't.
I guess my take on this, building a little bit of what Gerald said, it seems to me it lends itself to us having an ordinance that addresses what we need to do when we have a public safety or a natural emergency thing that the administration can act on without coming back to us. Then it seems to me that this really is an ongoing thing, and it lends itself to having a budget line item in there, and whether it's $250,000 or whatever it might be, that we bake that into the budget, and then it's an ongoing solution, not a one-time solution. So that's kind of where I come out in thinking about this. So. Anyway, what's your pleasure, everybody? We're basically just in a discussion mode as to what you'd like to see come back. Okay.
The one thing I think would be helpful just for you all to consider is instead of saying a one-time thing, because one time is, is forever, is that we say, one time or no more than twice in a 2 or 3 year period if we're going to do this, and give the county administrator flexibility in times of emergency, like if a tree blows down across the road, blocking the road, causing a public safety issue, that we be authorized to do that work whenever necessary, if that makes sense. Now, people failing to maintain their property and a tree falls over because they let it die or whatever, that's a different situation. But if it's a wind event or something like that, I'd like a little more flexibility built into there for our public works crews. I don't want to be responding to every private property, private road issue, but I do think there's some more flexibility we could build into this and still maintain the integrity of what we do.
So having heard the discussion, does this give you enough to chew on for a while?
Yeah, it does. I mean, we can go back to the drawing board and figure out try to address the concerns.
Okay,
So
anybody uncomfortable with that approach? Okay, good discussion. No meeting would be complete without John Rembold having a couple things to keep us on the track of the airport. John, you with us? You want to tell us about the two you got?
Sure, good afternoon, and thanks for accommodating me remotely today from Hilton Head Island as we finish up getting all the airplanes out of here for the busy RBC Heritage Weekend. Certainly was a good weekend, and we're always happy to see everybody arrive and leave their money behind when they come. All right, so the two things we have today I think are fairly straightforward. The first is just we've got a resolution in there that needs to be approved so that we can accept some grant money from state aeronautics. And that is actually to pay their pledged portion of a project that we've already finished and our portion has already been paid for. So all we need to do is accept their money at this point.
Okay. Pretty straightforward. And the other one, John, tell us about that on the 5K race.
Sure. The other one is with the 5K race. I may have told you that that's becoming a pretty exciting event. We coordinated with some other fall races that take place in Beaufort. So we've actually coordinated now a 3-race series. So there'll be 3 races in 3 consecutive weekends during the fall. And ours is the culminating event, which is really exciting because the way the races will be structured is certainly you can run 1 or 2, but there'll be a trophy or a medal of some sort that builds as you complete each of the 3 races of the series. So the only way to complete your medal for the series is to run our race at the end. So we anticipate a pretty solid attendance at our race, which is towards the end of October. I think it's the 22nd of October. And with that happening, we've run the race twice out there. And we've covered our expenses and everything and been able to have a little bit of seed money for the next year. But we see as the numbers grow and the excitement grows that we're probably going to have, more revenue than we would necessarily need to cover expenses and then cover some seed money. And we got to thinking of what would be a responsible way to deal with some of that money. Maybe, share some of the benefits. And ideally, our airport team said, an event like this on an airport ought to go to support some kind of aviation-related activity, ideally something with youth, and ideally something with youth who are, pursuing a technical and aviation-based education or exploration-type activity. And lo and behold, fairly recently, the Altitude Academy, which is based out on St. Helena Island, came to us because one of their officers works part of his time at our airport and then part of his time down at Savannah. He's an airplane mechanic and avionics technician and has sign-off authority. So pretty talented individual. And he started with a group of other folks, the Altitude Academy, which is there to, serve the youth and to expose them to aviation opportunities that they may not otherwise see. And we just thought that was a worthwhile organization to look to support, especially since it's very local to us.
Well, thank you, John. Let me look for a motion and a second on these 2 approvals. One to accept some money that we've already spent, and the second being to allocate a nominal amount to an aviation activity.
So move, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second, Mr.
Thank
Chairman.
you. Good. Any discussion on either one of these, or any comments?
Just want to make a comment
Sure.
about, and I appreciate, John, you acknowledging and including the Altitude Academy in your organization. It's a group of very young folks who are very excited about aviation at this time because of this young man who's a mechanic in Savannah, and he brought it to our attention that there was a career that he did not know anything about until he left home and went to Atlanta and became a mechanic, and he was able to move his way back. And so the closest airport he's working in right now is Savannah, but he's very right now he's working with at least 50 young men right now, getting them involved in this academy. And so I just want to say thank you, John, for acknowledging. And they're probably, because they're strapped with resources, they'll probably be looking to us to do some more in that area of helping. So just want to say thank you, John, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you all. Is there any objection to these 2 approvals? Duly motioned and seconded. These 2 stand approved without objection. That brings us to an update on solid waste and recycling. Dave, if you would.
This is specifically for a capital projects related project, solid waste and recycling. Happy to report we're moving forward to build a material recovery facility. MRF is the acronym, MRF, in Bluffton on county-owned property on Bentonfield Road. It's about a 4-acre parcel just off Ulmer Road next to Palmetto Breeze and Parks and Rec. Important to note, the MRF will accept and process only recyclable materials. No trash will be brought to this facility. Initially, we're going to start out just processing the source-separated material from our centers, but we're going to design this to expand to include single stream. The MRF will be about a 22,000 square foot building with sorting and baling equipment, and it's basically going to bale the recyclables and get them ready to send to the various markets. Our goal is to be operational by August 1st of next year, 2023. That coincides with the expiration of the waste management contract. So we have 2 RFPs we're going to be issuing. One is out now. We have an RFP out for architectural engineering services to design and permit the building. Those proposals are due May 3rd. And we're going to have another RFP that's going to be issued this week for the processing equipment. And those proposals are due May 18th. So once we receive those proposals, we'll be coming back to this committee with a recommendation to move forward.
Okay, well, that's exciting.
Very exciting, very exciting.
Alice?
Are the municipalities going to participate? I kind of know the answer, but I'd like to hear it.
Initially, no. Hopefully, in the very near future, the answer will be a resounding yes. Initially, we're just going to be accepting materials from our centers. So they're going to be the source-separated materials. We're going to bring them in. We're going to make sure we work through all the kinks, get everything going. And then, hopefully, in the very, very near future, we'll reach out to municipalities to get their single stream. That's where the materials are. That's where the large volumes are. And that's where we need the most help to increase our recycling rate. So,
So it's being built so they could accommodate them.
exactly, yes.
One of the things that you all should consider is that if they do not participate, is that we quit paying their solid waste bill on their behalf. So
I'm optimistic they'll all participate.
Yes.
Is there any reason why they shouldn't be part of this?
Reason they shouldn't, there is, no, financially is always a reason. Depending on what the cost will be, I feel very confident we'll be able to operate this very cost effectively. So right now, I can't see any reason why they would not participate.
yeah, there should be no reason for them not to participate. If you follow the recommendation of administration and say, hey, either do this or we're going to stop paying the landfill bills for those material.
Good, well,
Are there contracts with their solid waste providers? They'd have to, I guess, the municipalities would have to change their.
Yes, that's a very good point. 3 of the 4 municipalities have existing contracts. Town of Bluffton, for example, has a contract with Waste Management. I believe that expires next year or the year after. So we'd have to work with the various municipalities
Timing.
to time that. Town of Hilton Head does not have a contract, so there may be an opportunity to work with them pretty quickly and bring them in.
So as I understand it, we're going to build this facility as a MRF. We're going to have our existing centers where individuals can bring recycling materials to the center they are. It will then be taken over to the MRF to be processed.
That's correct, exactly. Right now, all the residents are putting their recyclables, source separating the recyclables at the convenience centers. Those materials are being hauled by Waste Management to their facility. So starting hopefully August of next year, we'll have a contract with a hauler which will bring the materials to our facility and we'll be able to process them.
Okay. And what about the various gated communities that work with like Waste Management?
That I'm hoping we can fold in pretty quick. They do single stream. So
Right.
that is where the biggest opportunity is. And that's where I think we'll be able to, as I said, greatly increase the recycling numbers once we're able to take those.
Okay.
good.
Dave, I'm not familiar with the site location, but
We call it the Public Works South location. There's a concrete plant right across the street, Palmetto Breeze, off of Ulmer Road.
Yes. They on his presentation.
So it's kind of in the Alljoy area.
Okay.
Is the best way to put it.
but when you build this facility, there's room for expansion on the site in the future years.
Very limited on this site. This site's only about 4 acres. So this will be a 22,000 square foot facility. That's about the biggest we can build on this site. There is a 2-acre parcel next to it owned by Ulmer that we may be able to acquire. But I think it's important that we continue to look for other sites where we can do something on a bigger scale. But this is something that's available to us right away. The equipment is relatively portable. We'll be putting a baler or sorting line in there. If there's a need, an opportunity that we find another spot, year, 2 years, 3 years down the road, we could pick that equipment up, move it someplace else, and that building could still stay on the site and be reused.
Mark?
Is there, a couple questions. Is there any noise that's going to come from this? I mean, there's no residential close by, but there is residential close by. So what kind of noise would this facility make? And then, that first question, go with that.
Much less noise than the concrete plant across the street. No residents immediately next door, and everything's going to be inside. So the sorting line is just a conveyor, so no noise from that. The baling equipment, very little noise, so it's basically just going to be the rolling stock, skid steer, forklift, backup alarms, and that's about it. And the volume of traffic will not be that large. It's just going to be bringing in recycled materials. I said no trash, so there won't be a large impact with truck traffic.
And the next question is more of a statement than anything else. So obviously, we're going to have the private companies that collect bring their recycling there as well. Obviously you drive around now and I've got 4 or 5 different ones that are in my neighborhood, and I sometimes wonder if those recyclables are really being recycled. I see them going into some of the same dump trucks that pick up the regular trash. So how does that work, or what's going to happen with that to get people to bring that to the recycling centers?
Yeah, and that's absolutely the key. Right now, I can't answer the question, or those recyclables that are being picked up, what is happening with those? And that's why we want to create this MRF, or recycling. So we know once the materials come in, they will be recycled, they will be sent to the market. So the key is controlling the materials, and that's what we're going to be able to do. Those are going to have to be controlled either working with the various municipalities or with individual contracts. So the gated communities, we could work with the gated communities. Typically, they have a single hauler. Hey, bring your materials to us, and work through that individually in contracts. The municipalities, they have a single hauler to, other than Hilton Head, have a single hauler to pick up all the municipalities. We could easily work with them that, bring everything to us. So that's the key, absolute key is the control.
Thank you, Dave.
Yep.
Chairman, I just want to make a comment. Mr. William, I've been working with you ever since I came on council, and to me, this is a start in the right direction for this county to actually take control of solid waste. And I commend you and your staff for bringing us in this direction. I think we have some other hurdles to cross. However, I'm looking forward to it, what you're doing there to be extended in other places, particularly on St. Helena, because I see it as a mini transfer station. But for this county, we are being proactive in controlling solid waste, and I think that's where we need to be. I had a hard time having other folks telling. It's like a farmer. You produce the product, you take it to the market, and they tell you what they're gonna pay you. And with us, solid waste, we got a product that we can actually, believe it or not, it's an asset. And that's how we should treat it. And we can actually make money off of solid waste. And I think we need to take every opportunity to welcome solid waste in this county, because we can make money. I'd make that statement.
Thank you very much. I'll pass those comments along to Cindy and the staff at Solid Waste. 100% agree with you. A lot of opportunity in St. Helena. We've had some discussions before, so I absolutely agree. This is a first step. It's a good first step, but it's certainly not the final step.
Yeah, and I would echo what he's saying. In the long run, we need a piece of property that is going to allow us to do as much recycling as we possibly can for all kinds of waste, whether it is tires, batteries, electronics, paint, you name it. If we have it on a site that we control the volume that's there, we can reduce our cost of getting rid of it.
And the key is, as you mentioned, and Councilman Clever mentioned, right now it's a resource. The waste is a resource. We are paying to get rid of it. If we have our own facilities, people will be paying us, and it'll be managed properly. So that's the key. It's a good first step.
I want to thank you and commend you all for what you're doing. Just 2 comments on it. One is, as you all have taught me, is one of the whole keys to this whole thing is called flow control. So as you get your hands around it, you can do an awful lot of things. If it's piecemeal, you can't do it. And secondly, there's always been the incentive in there, how widely it might be abused, we don't know. But if somebody is paying for recycling, and then that recycling goes to the landfill and we pay for it, the citizens got double charged. So we gotta flip that around. So, great job, thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Any other comments on that before we go? Anybody online? Good discussion. Okay, number 15, and we need to modify the word slightly, so I'm gonna ask Joe if he, or 16, if he would make a motion,
Yes.
including the modification.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make the motion that we recommend approval of an ordinance to allocate 2018 1-cent sales tax additional revenue to the sidewalks and multi-use pathway programs.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, good. Tell us about it.
Today, we have before you an ordinance to reallocate the additional funds that we collected through the sales tax program to the sideways and multi-use pathways. As you know, that category had 24 pathways and only $10 million. So this will allow us to complete the 14 priority that you set forward in resolution back in 2019.
Okay. Open it up for discussion and comment.
If I might, Mr. Chairman, what's
Yes.
the timeline? What's the timeline? When can you get these done?
All 14 pathways, sir?
Any one of them?
We actually currently have out for solicitation the construction of the Rebo Road. Coming up is also going to be the solicitation for construction of the Bluffton Pathway Parkway extension. The others are still in design, and some of them still have a public meeting period that we need to hit.
So you don't have a timeline for out of the 18, or how many of them? 18 or 14?
14, but we were only currently
14.
able to fund 8 of them.
Okay, and with this additional $18 million or $8 million, whatever it is, I understood that that increased it.
It would allow us to complete the priority 14.
14.
Yes,
And of
sir.
those 14, you have 2 of them in process.
We have 2 of them that are ready to be bid for construction. The rest are about, the 8 that we are working on, all of them are approximately 65% design.
Okay, thank you.
Mark?
So we're able to do 6 more. We only had $10 million the first shot, and we were able to do 8. Now we have 14 million, and we can only do 6 more. Do we have a list of those 6 additional ones?
So the ones that we are currently working on is All Joy Road, Bluffton Parkway, Depot Road, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Middle Road, Rebo Road, Salem Road, and Stewart Point. The ones that we would proceed with the remainder of the funds is Big Estate Road, Broad River Boulevard, Riley Road, Broad River Drive Pathway, Burton Hill Road, Meridian Road, Old Salem Road, Shad Avenue, and Ulmer.
Okay.
And that would be through design and construction.
Anybody online, other comments?
Trying to piggyback on Brian's comments, can you handle all of that at one time?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
we have, yeah.
You answered my question.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Those that are in the original first priority that you
The 14.
have on the design, is there any time frame of getting it designed and completed? Where's the timeline for completion?
Completion for all 8, I would say approximately 2 years.
2 years. Wow, okay. Thank you.
I guess I would just add my comments. I do think we ought to approve this and send it on to council and debate it. Essentially, what we have here is a $16 million over collection on the referendum because of the way they go to the end of a quarter. And so the money has to be used for either the pathways, the Ladies Island piece, or for the 278 corridor. And all 3 of them, need some money. I've always believed that the pathways are a good one to do because we kind of overpromised in the referendum. And I think if we do another referendum, it'd be good to have many of those approved and underway. Secondly, I'm not as up to date as I should be on the Ladies Island one, but I think we raised 30 million for that, and the last number I've heard is that we probably really need something like 60.
We're $42 million deficit. We applied April 14th for a $25 million raise grant.
Okay.
So we'll
That
find
could-
out the
that could
award
help.
in August.
Okay. And on the 278 piece, I think conventional wisdom is that there, with the amount of inflation that we're seeing, there's going to be some tremendous pressure there. Plus, some of the smaller projects that were recommended by the town might need some nominal amounts. So I think it'd be an interesting debate. Personally, I would think that there ought to be some way to split it up between the three and do well, as opposed to putting it all in one. But I think that's something for us to debate from a political standpoint. So,
Stu, if I might comment, I take exception to your suggestion that we consider the debate of spending some of this surplus on 278. The bridges and the construction on St. Helena took up the bulk of the monies and the 1 cent sale tax, 2018 1 cent sale tax. And so these pathways and these pathways that we promise our citizens, there was 24 of them initially. We only went back and told them we could only do, was it 8 or 10?
Well, the priority list was 14, but
14?
when we went to
Okay.
looking at our numbers.
And so that infuriated a lot of the citizens over the fact that we gathered 24, but we could only do 14. And so now that we've got this surplus money, we need to designate that surplus to these sidewalks, or else we're going to put ourselves in a position and a predicament where it's going to be hard to convince many people in this county to support another referendum of any sort.
appreciate your comments. Okay. Any others before we move on, Jim? Go ahead. York?
That was, because I thought you wanted a motion to move it
No,
forward.
I just
Oh,
like.
we'll vote on it, yeah.
I agree with Councilman Dawson. Some of these projects may need a relook and some public input, and it may reduce the initial estimates for them, but we've got to get some public input on the rest of them. And I agree with you, it all needs to go where we promised it would go, or we'll lose credibility on future
York?
referendums.
No, I thought you wanted a motion to take it to council.
I think
No, we have a motion.
we have a motion and a second.
To move it
So,
for just the way it's situated
Right
here.
now, okay. So, is there any other comments?
Yeah, Steve, I had a quick
Paul?
question. For
Yep.
What's the status on the Meridian Road pathway, Brittany?
So that was one of the 14 that we were not able to move forward with. So the money from this reallocation, we be put towards Meridian as one of those projects.
That's what I thought. So I'll be supporting this.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any objection to moving this forward to,
Larry has.
I have a question.
Larry, yes, I'm sorry, didn't see your hand.
It's okay. Is this recommended approval to move to full council in contradiction of what Councilman Dawson said?
No, I don't think so. That's exactly what he said we should do, right, Joe?
Okay, fine. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, objections? Seeing no objections, this is approved. Move on to council for first reading. The next and last item is really on 278, and just as backup, been a lot of activity, meetings, discussions, and I believe there's one next Thursday, which is a workshop.
It's Thursday, the 21st at 5 p.m.
That's this coming
here
Thursday,
at the
right?
county council.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Hilton Head's invited to be here.
Yes.
And hopefully we can bring some of this stuff to a conclusion. What I thought might be useful today was just give you an update on my take of where these various recommendations are. And as you may remember, there was a land planning company called MKSK that was retained to look at the work that DOT was doing and to bring forward their recommendations. They did that. Town has been through it, and there was 26 recommendations that are before us. If you can go to the second page. Okay. It may be a little hard to read, but we can send you a copy later if we need one. Alice?
You have this?
I got one.
Yeah.
Yep. Do you
So,
have one? I got 'em.
I won't go through all these, but it appears to me that about 16 of these are pretty much totally resolved. I think what DOT came up with was a pretty good transportation solution, very professional at the end of the day. I think the MKSK exercise identified a couple things that would be useful in dialoguing with DOT. Those comments were incorporated, which I think enhanced the transportation solution. A couple of those were the reduced speed limit, number 11 up there. Eliminating the third intersection that was very controversial on Old Wild Horse, elimination of the U-turns in Stony. So in my mind, those ones are pretty much done. I don't think there's any disagreement with those unless anybody, on council is going to take disagreement with those. If you could go to the first page. They kind of fall in. Eric, do you want to speak now, or let me just finish this page?
No, I'm just here if anybody has any questions that I need to answer.
Okay. As I kind of look at the remaining 10, and on the right-hand side of the page, there's a couple of them that are kind of really not DOT issues as I see it, but they're more things that the town and the county can do together if they want to. One of the recommendations, which was number 12 in the upper right-hand corner, was to evaluate all of the island-wide roads, and that needs to be done from time to time, regardless. And I think that's would be in the long-range plans of the so-called LATs and in what the town is doing. There were two recommendations in there in the lower right-hand corner, which were to create a Gullah Geechee Cultural Center, and number 24, to create a Heritage Visitors Center. A couple of us have started to have some conversations about whether that concept could actually grow into if you will, a Gullah Geechee National Corridor Visitor Center. And the history on that is that years ago, a national corridor within the National Park Service was created that extends from North Carolina to northern Florida, narrow along the coast, which honors the Gullah Geechee Nation. And it's never really had a visitor center from what I can tell, at least a national one. And so it strikes me that since Beaufort County is right in the dead center middle of that corridor, that whether we did it in Beaufort or on Hilton Head or Bluffton, that it might lend itself to that kind of an activity, which would basically build on the things that were recommendations coming out of this. So that's a subject for another day, but I think it's one that's worth us looking at. On the left-hand side, as I think about this, and I learned this from Eric, we're in the middle of completing what's called the environmental assessment. And it's, it requires national approval. It goes through a long process. And really the key to it at this point in time is that it is establishing the footprint for the corridor. And it basically affects the Stony and I think probably the Jenkins Island piece. It doesn't affect the bridge piece, which is separate. But so the key is to make sure we don't muddy up that process and that gets done in a timely manner, because that could start to derail things like funding and things like that. So, but then once that is done, there is room to do modifications within that corridor. And I think sometimes people get hung up on things that could be done downstream ought to be resolved now. So in my mind, these things kind of fall into two categories. One is the arrival experience, and I think there's some concern about whether it looks too much like just a regular interstate highway or whether it's something that's going to serve as a gateway for arrival of all of our folks. There's three things that fall in there. One is just improving it in general. Secondly, there's the one about whether there's two bridges. And thirdly, there would be one about whether we could design a better bridge. Now, relative to the two bridges, you may remember we talked about that at council, I think back in the February timeframe. There was concern about whether it would infringe on the environmental approvals, and secondly, whether it would cost, and the cost is on the order of $30 million from all practical purposes. And there's some folks who are not convinced that it would actually look better, because from a distance it would make it look wider. But in any event, I think it's up to the town to make the case if they want to on Thursday about where that is. But that's the one item that we as a council spoke about and rejected. The other piece in the lower left would be the value engineering piece. And by federal law, there is what's called a value engineering phase that takes place before the project is finished. Happens, I think, during the design phase. And there's a couple things that were recommended there that could be considered at that time. You know, one is there a second trail on the side of on the south side of as it works its way through Stony and toward the bridges. And there's another one that has to do with whether or not it ought to be 10 feet wide for the pedestrian trail or 14 feet wide for the pedestrian trail, but those don't have to be decided now. So in any event, I know we're starting to run out of time, and I'll just get to Eric in a second. I think when we get, my thought, Joe, on the meeting on Thursday is that it was such a small number of potential ones to talk about, it almost comes down to that the town needs to make a case for any of the ones that they think need to be done and aren't being fully considered. And I'm guessing there's 3, 4, or 5 at the most for that discussion.
Yeah, I'd like to add that some of them can't be done if they're considered or not, because DOT is not going to agree to them because of the design parameters that they have. So I don't want to create an impression that all the outstanding issues are able to be accomplished, because that may not be the case.
And I think when we have DOT and the county and the town around the table, a good outcome would be that we agree on all of them and recognize the constraints that you're talking about. And there may be some that need a little work, and there may be some that need and they can be looked at later. And I think you mentioned that you're looking at a contract on making the bridge more picturesque.
We're already pursuing that right now.
Okay.
And the proposal, as I understand it, coming out of the referendum committee, will be that we include those improvements as a part of the next 1 cent referendum.
Okay.
And pay for it with that. And we'll also make it clear that, we're not trying to be adversarial with town of Hilton Head Island. We're trying to move in lockstep with them and address the concerns that need to be addressed. As I stated in council meeting, the purpose of the meeting on Thursday afternoon is so that you all and town of Hilton Head Council can hear the same information at the same time from those folks that have been hired to manage the project, DOT and KCI Engineering, who has done all the public engagement on the project, so that questions can be asked in a group and answered in a group, so that everyone, both the county and the town councils, can hear those answers from those folks. A lot of work has been done leading up to this, and I don't think we've had an opportunity to hear thoroughly from those professionals in order to make sure that everybody has the same information. And that's why we keep getting these requests for additional studies and additional due diligence, if you will. I think we got a couple of emails over the weekend regarding the same item as well, the 278.
So I'm hopeful we're going to have a good session. Anything else?
No, just one additional thing I will point out is, Councilmember Rodman has 16 of 26 recommendations, but in reality, 21 of the 26 recommendations have already been agreed to by us and the town and DOT. So those items, if you take the gateway arrival experience, the bridge issue 14 and 18,
Number 3, the vary the median widths, and the increased trail width on the bridge. All of those have already been, are being planned for.
Okay, good. One last.
About 5 items,
Sure.
not all of which can be solved.
Anyway, I think it'll be good discussion. I'm always optimistic that we'll come out with a good conclusion. One last comment from my perspective as we wrap up. I looked at the draft report that LATS is doing for the long range roads that we need over the next, whatever it is, 25 years. And there were 2 things that jumped out at me. One was that there was about, I think, 40 million that was targeted in the immediate area of the roads going through Stony, including potentially parallel access roads and then some of the other roads that handle traffic off of there. And we need to make sure that whatever LATS is doing needs to be coordinated with what we're doing with the project in some form.
It's been done.
The other one that was kind of
the 278 project or the referendum project?
the 278 project. Yeah.
Again, we have to be careful.
I know.
About adding things or doing things outside of the 278 project that may lead the Federal Highway Administration into thinking that we're doing something that's going to impair the cultural protected community aspect of Stony. So we got to be real careful about that. So to the extent to where we can coordinate those stuff without reaching that, that's what we're doing.
And we really shouldn't have 2 things that look like they're in conflict because of if LATS is telling us we need to do one thing and it's inconsistent with the protecting the Stony area, we have to make sure that those 2 get coordinated. But that's easy to do. The other one is kind of interesting to me. We've had conversation about 170 over time, and Jared's done some very creative work on this. But essentially, if you look at 170, it's probably the most failing road that we have. And the concept of adding Argent and 278 to form that triangle makes a lot of sense. And so there were 8 different projects in the long-range plan that totaled up to $250 million in there. And we'll leave it to Jared and people like Craig Gordon to work on yourself, but it does seem to me if they're putting together their plan, it lends itself to look at those 8 projects that are all interconnected, and maybe there's a better way to put those into the long-range plan so it's all tied together, because even though those pieces could be fixed as we go forward, it's always better to have a plan that's logical as we go forward. So anyway, I see the hour is upon us, so all business having been concluded, we stand adjourned. And Chairman, you want a couple minutes before council?
Do we need a couple minutes? Okay. We'll start at 5 minutes after 4.